You think the world is run by presidents or billionaires like Elon Musk? Think again. What about those whose names you've never even heard? Their decisions can crash stock markets, devalue currencies, and even spark conflicts. Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, the guy on the $100 bill. And today we're diving in. We're talking about the Federal Reserve System of the United States, often called the invisible government or the true conductor of the global economy. Let's break down why the Fed holds so much power and what the future holds for the dollar. It all started in the fall of 1907, panic on Wall Street, banks on the verge of collapse. America realized the financial system needed a complete overhaul. Senator Nelson Aldrich headed a special congressional commission to reform banking. In 1910, he organized a secret meeting of the country's most powerful bankers and politicians on the secluded Jekyll Island to draft a plan for a central bank, something the U.S. didn't have at the time. Why all the secrecy? Americans had always been deeply suspicious of central banks. They were associated with monopolies and banker conspiracies. Calling it a central bank would have killed the idea instantly, so they disguised the plan as a harmless reform and gave it a neutral name, the National Reserve Association. It was supposed to manage money issuance and support regional banks while staying independent from the government. Congress was initially cold to the idea. The fingerprints of big bankers were all over it. Everything changed in 1912 when Woodrow Wilson became president. On December 23, 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed and signed. America finally got what it had deliberately avoided for nearly a century, a new central bank, now called the Federal Reserve System. The last time something similar existed was under Andrew Jackson. He fought it tooth and nail and shut it down in the 1830s, seeing it as a threat to democracy. Now it was back under a different name. 12 regional reserve banks were created across the country, overseen by a central board in Washington. It looked like a compromise, not a full monopoly, not fully government-owned. But in reality, the bankers from Jekyll Island got exactly what they wanted: control over money creation, interest rates, and the banking system. The participants of that meeting stayed silent for over 20 years. The truth only came out in the 1930s. By then, the Fed was already deeply embedded in America's financial landscape. Created to fight crises, it became the main player in preventing them. But how does the Fed control the global economy? It has powerful tools. Its dual mandate, stable prices, and maximum employment. The primary tool is the federal funds rate. Every 6 to 8 weeks, the Federal Open Market Committee sets the target rate. The interest banks charge each other overnight. Economy overheating and inflation rising, they hike rates. Borrowing gets expensive, demand cools. Recession, they cut rates. Money gets cheaper. Lending and investment pick up. Announcing the rate isn't enough. The Fed forces markets to follow through open market operations. It buys or sells Treasury securities to adjust the money supply. To lower rates, it buys bonds. Banks get cash. Liquidity increases. Rates fall. To raise rates, it sells bonds. Cash leaves the system. Rates rise. Simple analogy: imagine water in a city. Flood the streets with free water. It's cheap. Start collecting it back. It becomes valuable. Same with money. Less in circulation means higher price. After 2008 came quantitative easing, QE. When rates hit zero, the Fed started buying assets on a massive scale: treasuries, mortgage-backed securities. Banks got fresh cash that sat as reserves at the Fed, like money in a safe, available but not immediately circulating. There's also the discount window, emergency loans to banks at a penalty rate when everything else fails. The Fed is the lender of last resort. Example, the 2023 Silicon Valley Bank collapse. The Fed stepped in fast, guaranteed deposits, and provided liquidity to stop a domino effect. The Fed became the economy's fire hose, idle most of the time, but life-saving in a crisis. Now, how did the dollar become king? Before mid-20th century, the British pound was still a rival. World War II changed everything. Europe in ruins, Britain broke. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, currencies were pegged to the dollar, and the dollar to gold at $35 an ounce. The IMF and World Bank were created, holding 2/3 of the world's gold. The U.S. became the global banker. Keynes proposed a neutral currency called Bancor, but America pushed the dollar through. Post-war, it dominated trade and reserves, always convertible to gold. But in the 1960s, 70s, U.S. spending, Vietnam, Great Society programs outpaced gold reserves. The world suspected the U.S. couldn't cover all dollars abroad. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. No more convertibility. By 1973, currencies floated freely. Why didn't the dollar collapse? First, deals with Saudi Arabia. Oil sold only in dollars. Need oil? Need dollars. Second, the deepest, most liquid bond market in the world. Third, Paul Volcker in the 1980s jacked up rates and tamed inflation. Today, the dollar is still 59% of global reserves. This gives the U.S. an exorbitant privilege. As French Finance Minister Valéry Giscard d'Estaing called it, print the currency the world must hold and borrow cheaply. The flip side of the coin, a chronic trade deficit, imports exceed exports, debt exceeding 120% of GDP, asset bubbles, and export inflation. Consequences, debt is growing, interest payments may soon exceed defense spending. Inflation is a hidden tax on savings. The dollar has lost more than 95% of its purchasing power since 1913. Emerging markets suffer from capital outflows when interest rates rise. Cheap money fuels bubbles. Threats to the dollar, central bank digital currencies, especially China's digital yuan, de-dollarization in BRICS, record gold buying by central banks, crypto as a hedge. The dollar still reigns, but the throne is wobbling. The Fed conducts the orchestra, but the world is looking for alternatives. If this video was useful, like, share, and subscribe.